So this sounds kind of weird, but I'm trying to find Michael Greene because I have some questions about guest config. And here we are at Microsoft, and there are super secret rooms here. I'm not kidding you. And he likes to hang out in one of them. So that's what I'm trying to do. And I think if I feel the warmth on the wall here, I think he might be right around here. Let's go find out. Hey, there you are. Hey, I had some questions about guest config.
It's the coolest place to hang out. It's quiet.
It's quiet. This is perfect. Well, now at least.
Come hang out. Get a couch, get chairs.
I know, now at least I know why you come here all the time.
It's fantastic.
This is great. I'm going to steal this when you're not around.
It's Friday afternoon.
I had some questions about guest config. I'm thinking some stuff in my head, so I need your help trying to figure this out. So if I've got some VMs. Maybe they are cloud-born. Maybe I've done a lift and shift, and I've got VMs up in Azure. I don't really know what guest config can do for me. First of all, what is guest config going to, just as an overall kind of thing?
Yeah, so let's define what it is first. So first of all, we should, for everybody who's coming from a DSC background, we should explain, remember whenever we were thinking about, like Mark Gray had a blog post that was talking about DSC core and things like that. So all of the code that we've been developing during that whole time frame has spawned into this new project called guest config. So we looked at all the requirements customers were asking for from DSC, and we said, really, if we want to be successful with this, we need to sort of rebirth or reboot from the ground up, like where this stuff works. So we've rewritten the agents, the engine, all of those types of things to still work with what the community has built out, and so that customers continue using their projects. And we're putting this into a new paradigm called guest configuration. And where we started with that, if you think about, so if you're building a configuration management platform, DSC as an example, has this concept where you can apply once, apply an autocorrect, or maybe you just want to monitor. Well, there's always this conversation like, oh, that's cool because I can start with just monitor and just see how things are working, and then I can later come back and actually apply and configure things. So for the last 6 months, we've been focused on just audit because you're not going to break anybody just doing audit, right? That's how you start. In fact, do you want me to show you what this looks like and how to find it and what's available?
I think that would really help cement it. So, but you don't have a.
Let me grab my laptop.
Is that where you keep it?
Center of the world. All right. We've got my laptop open. You can see my screen. Let's just start assuming that you don't even know where to find this stuff in the Azure portal. And the quickest way to get there is actually to go to All Services. And then this gives you everything that's available in Azure, and just type policy. So this guest configuration is actually implemented within Azure Policy. The reason this is so cool, the problem we had to solve, so within Azure, if you're using Azure Policy, it's to solve problems like, in my organization, storage accounts should only exist in this geography. Or if I create VMs, don't let VMs in this resource group have public IP addresses and that sort of thing.
So it's kind of like a compliancy and guardrails. I like the way you say that.
You bring this up as a good point. When people start thinking about things like policy, they think group policy. And they think about things like security, password settings, that kind of stuff. This is an interesting area because a whole bunch of operations ideas are flowing into this too. Let me show you what this looks like. If you start by going to Policy and then clicking Definitions, and then you're going to get these filters. And there's 3 filters that you want to set to get to the list we're going for here. Change your type to initiative. Sorry, change definition type to initiative. Change your policy type to built-in. Especially if you're doing this for the first time. And then category, this is, right now we're seeing all things available in Azure as categories. If you uncheck, select all, and just check guest configuration.
Oh, okay, we can drill right to those then.
And then some of these columns, because different information displays based on whether it's custom or not, You just want to slide these over so you can actually read them. So we're not going to go to this like every detail of every one of these, but I wanted to point a few out to you. So what we're looking at, these are the built-in content. As a side note, this is kind of what we found. You remember like Ignite 2014, like I think it was still Ignite and not Tech Ed then, and like DSC.
Oh, it was Tech Ed, not Ignite. Yeah.
DSC got introduced.
Oh yes, I do remember that one.
So the back then, configuration as code was new to everybody. And everybody wanted to, like, couldn't get their hands on scripting it fast enough and building tools fast enough. A lot of those people now are like the real hardcore tool makers and things like that. They're still creating tools, but they're exploring the cutting edge and the latest, greatest technology. And this has had some time to get mature. And we're finding the people who are looking at this for the first time, they're just as interested in moving fast, but they're not really as interested in writing code. And now, for people who have an investment in this already for DSC and things like that, we want to make something that carries them forward. But for people who are looking at it for the first time, it's really nice if there's just a bunch of content there already that they can just turn on and not have to go write anything.
And that makes a lot of sense, right? The people that are at the bleeding edge, they're dealing with some of those difficulties, but now that we're getting past that bleeding edge, most customers, they don't need to be plunking away at bit twiddling code out for this. They need, how do I use this effectively? And we've had a chance now to figure that out, and that's basically what you've done by giving them this list.
Both groups, really.
That's awesome.
So some interesting policies, excuse me. So we start off with things that are easy, like who's in the administrators group, make sure that the log analytics agent is healthy and registered to the correct workspace. See, as we move down, there's some interesting ones in here. So, join the correct domain. Is it in the correct time zone? We actually have, specified services running, Defender Exploit Guard, Serial Console. So this one is kind of neat. Certificates expiring. So you could say across your entire subscription, maybe you're on the lookout for SSL certificates that are going to expire on web servers. You could have a policy that says your machine is out of compliance, which of course you can alert on, you can trigger workflows, whatever you want. To just be on the lookout, like within this time range, are my certificates expiring? It's not really something that you would do with monitoring. It's kind of this
that isn't a monitoring. There is real code back
under the hood.
there.
It's just DSC.
And it's just DSC.
So it's just a MOF file that says this is what should be there, and it's PowerShell-based DSC resources.
So you literally rolled all that code up into this nice initiative to make it easier for people to implement. But there is that real code back there somewhere. Oh, that's awesome.
The one right under this is interesting. VMs that have not restarted in the specified number of days.
Oh.
People asked for this to find rogue machines.
So wait, explain that. Wait a second. I don't understand how's that finds rogue machines.
So the idea is you've got a bunch of test projects and you were like spinning them up and you forgot about them.
Yeah.
So a machine that's on your network that's not getting patched, not getting secured, is ripe for a bad actor to find and be like, now I've got a machine that's on their network, they're not even paying attention to it, and it's not getting patched, so it's vulnerable. I can own this thing and then use it to go wherever I want. So this is just a way to be on the lookout, like, do these things exist? We can actually go and check if the Windows DSC configuration is compliant or not. We can look both for applications that are installed or not installed. So you can say, like, my monitoring agent, my backup agent has to be on the machine. Just as much you could say, like, maybe we've had some outages where we forgot and left like network trace tools or some sort of diagnostic tool laying around that, again, like if a bad actor found it, it's one less thing that, like, it'd be to their advantage to have it, one less thing that they have to install, which might, trip up them being on your radar. So let's have policy just go see, is this installed anywhere, and go look for it.
This would be a good example of more of a monitoring or auditing policy. You're not doing the remediation, though. If it is running, you're not removing it.
Yes, that's right. We're not.
You're just notifying me, and then I take action.
Read on it. Yep. So this is our newest one. And
the security baseline.
Yeah. So you can see policies, it includes 58.
Oh, yeah,
which
yeah.
half of those are to deploy the extension and half of them are to actually go audit. But this is a really cool one. In fact, let's go in one more level here. There's a couple others I was going to look at. Like we can go in and we can do network tests from the VM. We can say like, give me an IP address and a port, make sure that I can communicate, or let me know if, maybe the opposite's true. Like this machine's not supposed to have internet access. So just pick a destination on the internet and tell it every now and then go check and see if it has internet access and it's out of compliance, if something got screwed up in my network or the way that I've assigned this. So let's say that we went in to look at the Azure Security Baseline Initiative that I just had up a second ago. I clicked Assign. The first thing that I'm going to do is give it a scope. So we would just give it like the entire subscription or maybe some specific resource groups. Where this gets really interesting is as I scroll down. Now I'm going to just real quick hit scroll a couple times.
Whoa.
Yeah.
There's a lot there.
So here's what's funny. There's right at 100 parameters for this. If you were to go through these, you'll see they all have default values and they all have an info bubble that tells you what they mean. If you were to look in the old group policy object editor and you hit plus, and you expanded them all out, it's those settings.
Really?
Exactly
so this is exactly, so it's whatever we had in the registry that's here and you've got them all in here.
Now, there's actually 300 checks plus in this policy.
Wow.
We found out when we tried to make all of them parameters that it broke the page load SLA. Yeah.
It took too long to load it.
So we came up with the 100 parameters that we think are the most important to people, and we put those on the page. Now, if you want to use code in your assignments behind the scenes, you can actually customize any of them.
Oh, that was my next question. That's great.
This is the top 100. The other thing that's pretty cool about these, so with group policy, let's take like password policy as an example. The way that was working is you would say like password history. You can't reuse your last 10 passwords.
Right.
And then maybe the operations person assigned that across organizational units, and then that's just how it was for all those VMs. Maybe there's an application team that for some reason, maybe that's a bad example, but for some reason they need an exception. And like then you had to work through the whole thing. Well, for that OU, we're going to have a different policy and things like that. So the reality is a lot of these machines probably aren't even domain joined, but they might be using local policies like that to lock it down. This is kind of thinking that the audit could be coming from somebody who's responsible for looking across lots of subscriptions. And then the people who have the subscriptions can use whatever tools they want. They might use DSC, they might use Chef, Puppet, Ansible, Salt, you name it. So if we look at some of these like password policy, you'll see, like this is interesting, idle time required before suspending a session. It's saying the effective setting should be at least 1 minute, no more than 15 minutes, which means the application team can set it anywhere they want within that range. We're not looking for the numeric value that has to be in agreement across the entire org. And most of the numeric parameters within here accept a range like that. That's a whole new thing. We've never really done that.
And that's actually kind of an interesting concept. You're giving an allowable range. So let's say that your compliance requirements are, we're going to set it, it's got to be at a minimum here. Right. And it's got to be, this is our maximum that we're going to let. But you know what? We have this room in here, and if you've got particular needs, you don't even have to call us on the phone. You fit right in there, which is a lot different than calling me on the phone, getting me to, wait a minute, I got to schedule this now, and I got to run around, and I got to... This is actually very useful.
Yeah, this is really great. So that kind of gives you an idea of what it looks like to find the definition, to do the assignment. Now, after the results come back, we actually took some of the visualizations from Azure Automation and brought them over to policy. So let's take a look at that. You're going to want to start by clicking on compliance. There we go. And, I've got a bunch of things that I'm looking for. So let's just drill in and look specifically at that baseline policy. I've got one here with a machine that's out of compliance. Now, if I scroll over, you'll see basically, actually, this is a good point too. Customers told us that, okay, you got 300 settings. If I'm in operations and I go to my application team and I say, yeah, I'm auditing 300 settings and you're out of compliance, then that meeting never ends. Right. But if I can say your password policies need to be adjusted a little bit,
that's really targeted.
And now you can have a very meaningful conversation. So remember again, Group Policy Editor Console, like there was the expand and you got each of the areas and you open each of those. We have a different definition for each section that was in the group policy object editor view. So that's what we're looking at when we go across these. So things like control panel, network system, devices.
Yeah, okay.
So if I go look at, let's say, security settings, account policies, and I can say I've got this one test PS, and if I go look at view compliance details, now I can see, yep, for the policy assignment for compliance status, it was expecting compliant, it's not compliant, and the resource that was evaluated is here. Now this is going to look exactly like the Azure Automation state configuration view whenever you were looking at DSC and you wanted to go see if your configuration was compliant. There's the donut that tells you the percentage and things like that. So here we can see for enforced password history, it was expecting 24, the actual was 0, and you can see it's greater than or equal that value. Now what's really cool, if we go look at maybe one of these neighboring policies, if I go back a page, let's select all. There we go. And let's go up to something like network and view its compliance details. So this baseline policy actually has a specialized provider, but we're planning to move them all to work this way. It will show you the actual value. Oh, that one's not compliant as well. It'll show you, oh, sorry, no, I did this wrong. There's a filter. I could have done this on the first one too. There we go. So it's showing you the current value, even if it's compliant. So it's basically like saying, yep, I went and did the check, and what I was expecting to find here was current, or it was equivalent to what it was looking for. So I know what I basically confirmed the policy did its job. I can see if it's not compliant, why it's wrong. If it is compliant, this is why it's compliant. It was looking for this and it found it.
Because I was going to say the old way of doing things, that no news is good news, never worked out all that well because we never knew where we were.
Exactly.
And this is telling me, okay, I did this. This is working.
Yep.
Here's the stuff that's not. Again, making that conversation that you're about to have.
So let me just, before we wrap up, let me give you two things. One is, let's say somebody watches this video and there's something we didn't answer. Where are they going to go find information?
Great.
Let's go to aka.ms/GCPOL, guest configuration policy. And that's going to take us to the landing page in the docs. This is perfect. Okay, let me tell you this. Every time that we've had a customer question come in that wasn't on this doc, I make a commitment to them. I will go add it to the docs, and then I send them a link to prove that we did it. So that's
not only a big statement, that's an awesome statement for this documentation.
Everything is in here, including network requirements, what you've got to include, where the log files are. We've got scripts that tell you how to go collect the logs using run command if you want to do that.
Perfect.
And then if you go to how-to guides, our newest page, so this feature, everything we've discussed so far is all GA. It's all publicly available. It's all fully supported. When I click on this link, create a guest configuration policy, this feature is in preview, but this is where it gets really cool for the DSC community. So if you want to go, remember we said that under the hood, the plumbing of this, it's just a moth file and DSC resources. If you want to use your own moth file and your own DSC resources, maybe you want to do something that's not generic. Maybe you've got a homegrown application that you're putting into Azure and it's got config files or registry keys, or you want to make sure the service is continually running. You don't want to use this as monitoring per se, but like maybe you deploy this in like 15 different scenarios and you want to just look across all of them and make sure best practices for your own application.
For your own applications.
Yep.
So I can put my own stuff into this.
You can. And before we wrap up, I'll show you my favorite part of this page. So you can see we've got a new module in the PowerShell gallery called guest configuration. Remember how difficult debugging has always been for DSC and trying to figure out?
Don't even bring back the nightmares right now.
So if we scroll down, we give you some example policies or some example configurations to create. Here's a commandlet that creates the entire package. So you just tell it, here's my moth. It'll go find the resources from your workstation, put them with that moth file in a zip file. So it's all ready to go. We talk about how to work with secrets from Key Vault, which is a nice new feature. And then there's this test a guest configuration pack. There's actually a commandlet. It takes the agent that we put inside the VM when it's running in Azure and brings it to your developer workstation and then runs that audit using that agent to go make sure it's going to do what it's supposed to do.
So instead of testing against your local machine, it's testing more towards
it's testing wherever you want to put the
environment.
agent, but you don't have to pay for a VM to be running in Azure to run your tests. You could run this within an instance of a virtual machine on your workstation.
So I don't have to create all this infrastructure just to test my configs.
Exactly.
You're just going to do it with the agent.
Yep.
Wow, that makes it so much
It's really cool.
easier.
I'm really happy we got that done. And then it creates everything for you. We could go into a lot of detail here, but I just want to kind of roughly go through this. We talk about the life cycle, so if you're versioning these things and going through releases. And then the last bit on this page is pretty cool. There is a tool that will convert a backup of a group policy into this format.
Now, how many requests have you gotten for that? That is like customer screaming thank you.
It's number one, you probably already have some group policies.
Oh, yeah.
So your source of content is like free and right there, you start using it. Number two, if your organization has to meet some industry baseline and you're trying to figure out how to do it, almost all of them provide group policy templates that you can just snap into. You can just convert them and go use them in Azure as DSC. So this is a little bit more of an expert level scenario, but it 100% works. I mean, it's an operations developer scenario.
The fact that it supports that scenario, that's the amazing piece right there, because that's what I need to be able to do.
This is an example of the DSC skill set finding a whole new area. Like you can go from being, this is how I configure servers, to this is how we can improve our governance stature across our organization.
This is fantastic.
So we should meet again. We'll talk about like how to do assignments as code, and you can track your exceptions to this kind of stuff and source control. You know who else? You should meet with Jane on our team, because she's the PM who's taking on making all this stuff hybrid, so you can use it outside of Azure too.
And you know what? First of all, I'm going to make sure that we have the document links for this in the show notes down there. And I'll hook up with Jane and see if we can get her to talk to us for a little bit too. Good. And I look forward to seeing you again. This is a great start. Thank you so much.
You bet.
Awesome. And I'll leave you to your nice and wonderful room.
All right.
The other people looking for you already.
There you go. They brought a dog.